Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for staying. So yes, the AC unit, it's nice. It was a little unbearable here earlier. I've noticed that when the first really hot days start arriving, there's this kind of moment, at least for me, I don't know if it happens to any of you, that you're just kind of walking around in the heat and you can literally feel your mind just kind of seeping out from your head. Like just kind of starts back of your hair and it just kind of comes and then all of a sudden it's like in the front of your face. It's like, what? What happened when I was a child? Well, that's gone now. I mean, I'm really thinking at some point I've lived in cities like Madrid or New York. If you're like in a major metropolitan city in the middle of summer, you'll just see like people just kind of wandering. And I think a lot of these people are probably just regular people, but just stayed outside one or too many days and just lost their mind. They're just like, what happened? Yes, it's hot out. Lovely. But you can't just, get worried about stuff like the heat. You gotta try to learn things. And a lot of the things, whenever I do it, I try to learn more new information, try to ask new questions. Now, this was a question that was pondered to me recently. What do you call a really young man in Europe who likes to beat up tourists? A youth hostile. But as reading, one of the things, really like to read a lot is the news. There was an interesting story I read a couple of weeks ago that right now people have developed a way that for only $5,000 you can build a completely self-sustaining, off-the-grid home in an old storage container. Or you can give up your delusions and move on with the rest of your life. One of the other things they talk a lot about in the news is depression. Bonnie was talking a little bit. In our society, a lot of people, the way things exist, often feel depressed. They're not sure what they're going to go. And a lot of people debate now, people are trying to prove who has the most depression. It's like, is it young people? Is it old people? Is it men? Is it women? Well, the group that I feel suffers the most from depression, scuba divers.
Because they're going down.
What? One of the cool things, I was watching, talking to a lot of friends is, the taxi service Uber, the alternative taxi service? So one of the things that gets to me is that whenever I hear people in English using the word Uber, I'm almost guaranteed that they're misusing the word. Here's why. Uber doesn't mean super in German. The Germans have a word for super. Super. Uber means over. It's a reference to a term from the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the Übermensch, because he thought, in his excitement, that in order to exist in society, it was difficult because you were depressed and you weren't sure, God may exist but he's silent. And to get through this world, it's almost like being a tightrope walker, a Übermensch, an overman. So basically, when you use the German word Uber in that way, you're not invoking strength and power so much as you are invoking a depressed German philosopher with a trapeze fetish. But the thing is, gets to me with Uber, of course, is that what is it? It's basically, they're really bragging, we set up this informal, untaxed taxi system where people just, arrange rides themselves and just give somebody some money and they get in a taxi service. Okay, so basically this is a bunch of white people claiming they invented something that's been in the third world for about 80 years. The other thing though, it's if you're going to call it Uber taxi, I think you should, be like a real Uber taxi. If we're going to properly use this word. And this is what I think the real Uber taxi would be like. Hello, welcome to Uber taxi. Life is a pointless repetition with no beginning or end. So why does it matter when we get there? Uber taxi. I'm saying that, one of the things, besides just German, is I like a lot of European cultures, and one of my closest friends is from the Dutch city of Rotterdam. Now, Rotterdam is the second city of Holland, and it's really cool, because it's pretty mixed, because Holland used to have a very large empire, so people from all over the world, and actually it looks a lot like the composition of this room. You get every sort of race there, it's really cool. What's really interesting is how Rotterdam is set up, because it looks like a science fiction movie, because everything was built after 1945. The reason is, of course, the war. Now, what's really amazing is everything in the center of town was destroyed except the main cathedral of Rotterdam, which I've decided means one of two things. Either there's a god, or Hitler had a really weird sense of humor. It's a little too dark for you guys, yes. One of the cool things, though, with studying the Dutch language is a lot of their language, they just ran out of words, it seems, and they've just created new words. An apple core. You know, it doesn't seem that complicated. In Dutch, it is a klokhuis. A clockhouse is the word for apple core. Gloves are called hand shoes. Handschoenen. This is how desperate I guess they were for languages when they were setting up the Netherlands. Probably my favorite one is the word for French fries. Patatja oorlog, which means war potatoes. Here's where it gets even funnier. Oorlog is the Dutch word for war, but it literally translates to cumbersome ear. Hello? Yes, I want a hamburger and some cumbersome ear potatoes, please. Thank you. So on the subject of Europe, I don't know if any of you saw that there was a big arrest yesterday with a lot of the people who had FIFA, people responsible for all the World Cup. They had a massive arrest go down. And it was pretty interesting because you just said all these guys were trying to pretend oh, I have no clue what's happened. Now first of all, FIFA's led by a guy named Sepp Blatter. Sepp Blatter. Look, if that's your name, your name is Dribbly Penis. We all know that your name really is supposed to be Dribbly Penis. Now this guy runs FIFA. He has never played soccer at any point in his entire life. Ever. They can't find anything. If you run an industry representing a group of people who do a very specific job, and you've never done that job, you're probably crooked. But what's amazing is that he's just kind of complaining that a lot of these people don't seem to understand really how corruption works, Governor Christie. So basically, here's how it works. If you're running an organization, and a bunch of people below you who you hired broke the law, it means one of two things. Either you're incompetent, which means you shouldn't have your job, or you were in on it, which means you shouldn't have your job. But what's really cool is, and who was the one person who stepped up when nobody else would to defend Sepp Blatter? Who did it? Why, that paragon of democracy and virtue, Vladimir Putin. I mean, I think Satan could just come up from the earth and just knock over, several buildings in New York, begin terrorizing people, and the American military would shoot at it, and Putin would be like, "But I don't understand. Why are you attacking the devil? They fight. America fights the devil, so America thinks they are Jesus now." And you look at what just amazes me, though, particularly if you ever study Putin, is that, for example, recently he played an exhibition hockey game. Putin just started playing hockey about 2 years ago. He somehow managed to score 8 goals in a game against former NHL players. For those of you who don't follow hockey, the previous world record, set in 1921, was 7 goals in a game. If you are ever able to score 3 goals in a game, you basically make the Hall of Fame in hockey. But somehow Putin was able to do 8. I just can't imagine how difficult it must be to be the people who have to actually back up dictators and have to say with a straight face, if you're the dictator, I could see lying to the international community. But can you imagine the educated people who have degrees and they're just well, yes, everything is fine here in Russia. Vladimir Putin is the most wonderful man. He makes rainbows wherever he walks. I hate myself. Please kill me. When will that? I mean, it is wonderful here in Russia. So that's basically how things go, and that is basically my time, so enjoy the rest of your reading.